as soon as you're ready.
I'll let you know as soon as we're up and running. We're live.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Senator Jim Dill, Chair of the IFW Committee, and I want to welcome everybody here to our committee meeting on Valentine's Day. And actually, before I do introductions, even though I know Representative Landry read through it quickly or talked about it last week, I do have a one-page reminder on decorum that the President has asked each Senate chair to read. So I'm going to do this very quickly. Good morning. My name is Jim Dill. I have the great honor of serving as the Senate Chair of the IFW Committee, and I represent Northern Penobscot County. Before we begin our work today, I want to take a moment to thank all of you for your hard work so far this session. Serving in the Maine legislature on this committee can be extremely demanding and time-consuming. While we may disagree on certain policy areas, I believe every member of this committee is deeply committed to serving their constituents and working in good faith to confront the issues that come before us. That being said, as we approach the halfway point of the legislation session, presiding officers have asked committee chairs to take a minute to remind both legislators and public participants that maintaining decorum is vital to ensuring we complete our work in an orderly and efficient manner. It's also important to upholding the integrity of this committee. If you need a refresher, the rules of procedure in the committee are the same as the rules of procedure in both the Senate and House under the joint rules. In addition, the Maine Legislative Code of Ethics charges each legislator with civility and responsible conduct both inside and outside of the State House. Here's how this translates to our committee work. Committee members are required to show respect at all times for witnesses and for other committee members. All discussions must be conducted in a manner that is not disruptive. Impugning the motives of another committee member is prohibited. Engaging in the discussion of personalities of other members is prohibited. A committee chair has the power to limit testimony at public hearings as necessary for orderly conduct of the hearing, and members shall refrain from interrogation that is argumentative, oppressive, repetitive, or unnecessarily embarrassing to hearing participants. In an effort to maintain order and decorum, all questions must be addressed through the chair. All speakers must be recognized by the chair. Questions relating to order are decided by the chair, subject to the appeal by the committee. If a participant violates the rules of order and decorum, the chair can take action to limit the ability of that participant, continue disrupting the meeting or in the public hearing. Republican, Democrat, Independent, or enrolled, every single person who appears before this committee deserves respect, as do our esteemed colleagues who serve on the committee. I want to thank each of you for your efforts in helping to keep our duty of civility outlined in the Legislative Code of Ethics and demanded by our constituents. Thank you. So basically, it's same decorum as we use on the floor of the House and the Senate. So I hope you all heard that. And I don't think we've had a real problem in this committee. And I thank every one of you for that. So with that, we will start our introductions, and I will start with Representative Mason.
Good morning. Thank you, Senator Dill. I'm Rick Mason, and I represent District 56, the great people of Lisbon.
Representative Hepler.
There we go. I'm not used to being so early. I'm Allison Hepler. I represent the towns of Arousic, Georgetown, Phippsburg, Woolwich, which is where I live, Dresden, and a small part of Richmond.
Representative Terrio.
Good morning. Thank you, Senator. I am Tim Terrio. I represent District 79, which is Albion, most of Benton, China, and Unity Plantation.
Representative Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, folks. Danny Martin, House 150, located in northern Aroostook County.
Representative Neto.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kathy Neto. I represent District 78, which covers the town of Winslow and a small portion of Benton.
Representative Landry.
Good morning. I'm Representative Scott Landry. I represent Farmington, New Sharon, District 113.
Representative John Martin.
John Martin, District 151, starting in Allagash down Route 11 to Oxbow.
Representative Lyford.
Good morning. Thank you, Senator. Peter Lyford, District 129, Clifton, Eddington, Holden, North Brewer, and Vesey.
Senator Black.
Good morning, Russ Black from Wilton, representing all Senate District 17, which is all of Franklin County, and 4 towns in Kennebec, Belgrade, Mount Vernon, Vienna, and Fayette.
Representative Ordway.
Good morning, I'm Lester Ordway. I represent District 23, which is part of the town of Standish.
I'm not sure who our next person is here, but
Morning.
it says Senator Curry.
Good morning, I'm Senator Curry. I represent the 26 rural, coastal, and island communities of Waldo County.
Good morning, Senator. Representative Alley. You're muted, Representative Alley.
How about now?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. Good morning, Senator Dill. And this is a snowy one down here. But anyway, I have 12 communities down here in Washington County, District 138. Thank you.
Thank you. And as I mentioned, I'm Senator Jim Dill. I represent District number 5, Northern Penobscot County. And we have several things on our agenda this morning, but it's going to be a little different than was posted. The first thing I want to remind everybody is we don't have a committee meeting next week. Monday's a holiday and Wednesday is a session day. So our next session will be the 28th. Today we have 2 work sessions scheduled. LD 116, an act to allow the Commissioner of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife to authorize the hunting of antlerless deer without a permit in certain areas. The other one, which is LD 813, an act to amend the definition of oversized ATV to increase the minimum weight requirement, we are not going to take up today. My understanding is there's a group that is trying to work on some of the language with the department and others. So we're going to postpone that to our next meeting. And then we have LD 1663, an act to improve boater safety on main waters. And again, my understanding is there's been quite a discussion on this. So we'll bring this up for possible reconsideration on what to do with this particular bill. And then finally, we have quick 2 relatively quick language reviews. One is electronic tagging of big game, and the other one is electronic tagging of turkey. This is just a quick language review to see where we are. These both have gone forward to be referred to our committee so that hopefully the following week, the week of the 28th, we'll be able to have our public hearings on both of these. So we hope they will get these referred to us on this particular coming Wednesday. So with that, I would go back and start with LD 116, an act to allow the Commissioner of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife to authorize the hunting of antlerless deer without a permit in certain areas. And I would ask Julia to bring us up to speed on this one.
Thank you, Senator Dill. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Sorry for the pause. I, of course, have so many windows open.
And I would remind everybody too to please mute yourselves until you're called on. That way, if there's any background noise, it won't interfere with what's going on. Thank you.
I'm going to begin with the bill analysis while I try and pull up the language, but this is a good place to start. So we had the public hearing last week, and what the language is going to be doing is, I'll read through this with everyone, is it creates a $12 antlerless deer permit fee, and the revenue is put into the deer management fund, less administrative costs. It changes the wildlife management areas that allow super PAC holders to use their permits from 3,000 to 2,000 deer or antlerless deer permits that are issued annually. It eliminates swaps and transfers of permits for game animals except for moose. It eliminates resident hunter antlerless deer permit and antlerless deer permit transfers to a junior hunter. It repeals the law which temporarily permitted the use of crossbows to hunt deer and turkey. Instead, it is allowed for an ongoing basis during the open archery season and the fall season for turkey hunting. It establishes by rule a lottery system for issuing antlerless deer permits, and the commissioner may also allow for the direct purchase of additional antlerless deer permits in certain areas of the state. And it directs the department to determine the statutory changes which are needed to equate crossbows and vertical bows for purposes of hunting laws, and to report these changes with the cost and timeline to the Joint Standing Committee that has authority over matters of inland fisheries and wildlife. And ultimately, there is authority to report out a bill on the matter. So that is where we are currently at with antlerless deer. Stop sharing.
The questions for Julia. Senator Black.
So, and this might be for the commissioner, but does this change it so that the language we're going forward, would this eliminate the free doe permit lottery that we have now and require anybody that wants a doe permit to pay $12?
Thank you, Senator Black. Yes, that is correct. There will be no fee to apply for the lottery, but should you be drawn for the lottery, it would cost you $12 to exercise that authority. And that would be for a second animal. So that would be for a doe, in addition to the deer, the buck that would come with your regular big game license. So right now, many people that get an antlerless permit, you still just can harvest one animal, either a buck or a doe. This would allow you to harvest a second animal. So it's a $12 fee. That money goes to the deer mitigation fund to buy and protect deer yard habitat. And it is for an additional big game animal.
So in hearing that response, it really doesn't change the existing doe lottery right now. If you enter the doe lottery, free, and you get picked, you have your choice of a doe or a buck. If you use the doe tag there, you lose your buck tag, just like it always has been. There's no fee for that first doe tag, no fee whatsoever. The only fee is if you're in the lottery, you got to be in the lottery to apply for the second doe tag.
No, so your big game license will be for a buck. Then if you want to harvest a doe, you will need to either get one through the lottery, which would cost $12, or in some WMDs, we anticipate not all of the available permits will be issued through the lottery. So there'll be some available over the counter. So you could buy one over the counter. And so right now, or in this proposal, everybody will have the opportunity to harvest a buck with their regular big game license. And then they will have the opportunity to harvest a second animal, which has to be a doe, for $12.
So in other words, there's no free doe.
Correct.
And I would, I don't know where Senator Black was leading on that, but I've heard some of that also, that I don't think people that want to get 2 deer or that type of thing have any problem with paying the $12. But I have heard from a lot of people that, I enter the doe permit and I just would like to go out and shoot whichever. I'm just going out and enjoy myself in the woods. And if I decide I want to shoot a doe, I will. If I have a doe permit or any deer permit, and I don't know why I'm going to have to pay $12 for that. I don't think it's a real hardship, but that's what I'm hearing from a lot of people. Senator Black.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and that's what I've heard. I got a lot of pushback after this came out. I don't know, somebody must have sent out an alert or something, because over a couple weekends ago, I got 6 or 8 calls, and they said that, when this doe permit lottery was put out, they said that we would always be able to get free doe permits as long, because I know one legislature can't dictate to the next, but, we were promised that when this was put forth, that we would always be able to have, free opportunity if we entered the lottery to get a free doe. And these typically the ones I'm hearing from are older hunters who basically, meat hunters type of, they want to put the deer meat in their freezer. So I am having quite a lot of pushback from hunters in my district from that. That no problem paying the $12 for an extra one or whatever. It was that they felt that there would be a lot of hunters that would not join the lottery. There would be less doe shot because they wouldn't be willing to pay that $12. Thank you.
Senator Terrio.
Thank you, Senator. Yeah, I've gotten some pushback, just like Senator Black, on the free. I don't know. I like what we're doing. I actually do like the concept of it because you're putting in for a permit, and that is free. If you want to use it, then you pay $12. I like the concept. But
and I would just, if I could, Senator Dill, just remind folks that up until 2018, you had to pay for the bonus permits. So up until 4 years ago, there was a fee for the bonus permit, and folks could still enter the lottery and pay the $12. They still can just harvest one animal. There's no requirement. You don't have to harvest the buck to be able to exercise the doe. And so you could pay $12 and have the option to hunt for a buck or a doe and shoot 1 or 2, whatever your preference is. And what a lot of people have said to me in feedback is that they really like this because it allows them to say shoot a doe earlier in the season, but still have their buck tag to go to deer camp later in the season. So I've heard both sides. I recognize people are maybe concerned that for the past 4 years, they haven't had to pay for that additional opportunity. But they did have to pay for it prior to that.
okay, but geez, now I lost my train of thought, Judy.
Why are you thinking about it, Tim?
Sorry, Representative.
I hear what you're saying, Commissioner, and I think that's fine. And I don't think anybody has any problem if they want to shoot 2 deer. Paying $12 for an extra deer. It's a lot of states are that way. You buy different, numbers of permits, etc. I think the issue has become that I enter the any deer permit lottery, and if I was drawn, now it's my choice. I can only shoot 1 deer, but it is my choice whether I shoot a doe or a buck. And some people say, oh, well, I'd rather shoot a doe anyway because they're much better tasting. I think what the concern is not so much that the $12 for the bonus and I can shoot 2 or maybe even 3 or 4 if I keep buying more permits. But if I just want to go out and hunt and enjoy hunting and, want some venison in my freezer, now I just have to pay an extra $12 for that. And I'm not saying that's going to break anybody, but some people it could be, a problem for, but, and I don't know if there's any way of making it both ways in a way, but I'm hearing the same thing that both Representative Terrio and Senator Black said. Got your thought back, Representative Terrio?
I'm telling you, it took a minute, but all right. So liking how it's going, I'm just curious if we're going to be as effective in getting the does harvested that we want doing this process, because there's going to be confusion with how this goes, just like the ATV bill. People don't even understand they're fine, but because they're going to apply for these doe tags and it's free. If you use it, it's going to cost you $12 and you're getting an extra deer. But I like it, but I'm just curious if it's going to, get the goal that we're hoping is, harvesting more does. That's just a thought.
So if I may.
Sure. That was directed at you, kind of.
Okay, yep, thank you. Right now, less than 10% of any deer permit holders actually shoot a doe. And what we are finding is that people are kind of putting in, because the lottery is free and the permits are free, they put in for themselves, their kids, their grandparents, and they hoard these permits and they don't actually use them. So last year we issued 180,000 and we still were 30% short of our goal. So the system right now, we know it is not effective in our ability. It's not allowing us to effectively manage the population. And so we believe that if people have to pay a nominal fee, that will be a little bit more incentive. It'll have a little bit more of a serious hunter that is going to exercise that and actually help us do a better job at achieving our goals. Now, obviously, we're not going to issue 180,000 permits if we anticipate a higher success rate. But we do believe that the people who are more serious about hunting a second animal, if they have to pay that $12, will do that, rather than right now lots of people who get 5 and 6 and permits for the kids or their grandparents, whatever, because they can transfer them, right? So some in my household this year we had, I think, 10 doe permits. We didn't harvest any. And so
can I follow up, Jim?
Absolutely.
So are you going to be able to purchase another doe tag? I guess that was a question that was asked to me too. If you've gotten one, you've harvested the extra doe, can you purchase another one in WMDs that allow it?
Yeah, so there will be some WMDs. We anticipate there will be some WMDs that will have over-the-counter sales. So if you missed the lottery, you forgot to put in, you missed the deadline, you whatever, you weren't successful in the WMD you live in, but this other WMD has permits available. So there will be over-the-counter permits available for, on a first come, first serve basis. At this point in time, we're thinking that we would just limit that to 1 per hunter until we sort of see how it shakes out and how it works. We don't want people buying 10 over-the-counter permits and hoarding them just, so that we want people to exercise those tags and harvest those animals. So I'm not 100% positive that we've worked out how the over-the-counter permits would be, that if everybody just gets one, I think is the simplest way for the system to manage. By the system, I mean kind of the computer system. And then, but they have also talked about a process similar to the you need to sort of harvest one and then you can get another one, and then you could buy an additional one if you harvest one. But at this point, I think we're looking at probably you could get one you could get one in the lottery, and then you could still buy an additional one over the counter. So you'd have to pay for 2 extra, but you could get up to 3 animals. So we have very few people in the state that harvest more than 2 animals.
Oh, I'm sure. But is there a way of making the system so that you have to use one before you can get another one?
That's I don't think it's impossible. We just don't know quite how. Tim, maybe the deputy commissioner has the answer to that one.
Yeah, it creates a layer of complexity that we're not wanting to work through at this time, but it can be done. It's just a lot of programming to be able to do that.
Representative Ordway.
I think most of my questions were just answered, but I do have a definite concern with management. I think in my district, there are more deer than dogs. They're everywhere. So that management concern is definitely there. And it was the number, the other concern is the number of doe permits that somebody could actually go purchase.
Representative Lightfoot.
Thank you, Senator. Commissioner, you said you wanted to harvest 108,000 additional doe, and you only got 30%. Is that correct? What is your goal? Not you never will get 100%, but what were you
Right,
kind
so
of?
great question, Representative Lightfoot. So I think our goal, let's see, we harvested around 12,000 does this year. That was about 30% less than our goal. So in order to harvest our goal, we have to apply what we sort of call an expansion factor, understanding that most people that get a permit don't actually harvest a doe. So in some areas, it's 10 or 15 permits that we have to issue for one doe to be harvested. So this year we issued close to 180,000 antlerless or doe permits and harvested 12,000 animals. So, you know, obviously the system's kind of not breaking. It's not working, that we shouldn't have to issue 180,000 permits to achieve our management goals.
Thank you.
Other questions? Julia, when you put the information up, you kind of glossed over it at the end, something about us being able to report out a bill. What was that one talking about? I mean, we've already got this in front of us about the antlerless deer. What was the section of that we said that we could report a bill out on?
So let me pull it up again.
Okay.
Here. So the reporting out a bill is based on this section that directs the department to determine the crossbow changes. It is not necessarily related to additional antlerless deer changes.
All right, so that's about crossbows then.
It's this section here.
All right. Thank you. Because I thought it might have something to do with what we were discussing here, but it's just kind of a separate issue. So, Representative Terrio.
Thank you, Senator. Do you think it would be possible to hear from David Trahan on what their thoughts are? I know he didn't get a chance to talk to us the other day, and he'd like to say something.
Sure. Just remember, it's not a testimony, but if you have specific questions. Welcome, Mr. Trahan.
Thank you, Senator Dill and Representative Landry. I think probably the committee, well, welcome to the other committee members too. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I suspect that many of you thought it was quite odd that you saw no testimony from, I think, just one person. And I wanted to explain to you why I believe that happened. When we saw the schedule, and we do this every week, we look at all the bills that are up for public hearing, and the original bill, which spoke to a different issue, was what was posted on the main legislative website, not the new language you're looking at now. We would have definitely sent out an alert and testified on this bill had we seen the amended language was what was going to be the new bill. As you know, normally what happens is the bill title gets changed and the new language gets advertised. And unfortunately, with COVID and all that's happening, we think this bill maybe fell through the cracks. But thank you for letting me tell you Sam's position. We did have a part in writing this amended language. Our consulting biologist, Jerry Levine, had a big part in it. Originally, when this bill was being put together, I had suggested to the commissioner that we look at a license fee across the board, increase of a couple of bucks or something to help mitigate the costs. And you might find it odd that I did that, but the full intentions from our organization was to establish a revenue stream that could support the ongoing expansion of the department's management of deer wintering areas that we're buying. We know that's going to cost something. And so this would have been a good way to connect the support of bringing deer back in northern, eastern, and western Maine to the deer hunters and their opportunity. I polled my members, I think 3 questions on this issue. And my questions, and I paraphrase, but I can give you the results and the questions if you would like, were if we went to this policy and all the money was dedicated to the deer management account, the support was 3 to 1 in support in all the questions if the money goes to bringing deer back. So we would have testified in favor. We would have mentioned the idea of minimizing the fee increase if you desired. But we think that the bigger picture is the money that will be raised will be going through that deer management account, which gets matched with federal money, and will give the department the resources they need to bring deer back where they need to be brought back. We think, and I did have some of the calls you folks did, and I'll tell you what one of the discussions, and maybe this will help ease your thoughts a little bit. One of my members said to me, I don't want to pay $12 for this extra deer. And I said, well, I don't want to pay $20-some for my license, but it supports managing our wildlife sustainably. But I said, think about it for a moment. The amount of opportunities that we deer hunters have experienced over the last 10 years are just amazing. We can go September archery hunting, shoot multiple deer. We can hunt in October, shoot another deer. We can hunt in firearm season and shoot multiple deer. And then we can hunt in muzzleloader season and shoot a deer. We have amazing opportunities, and we're blessed to have those opportunities. But not everybody in the state does. And I think Representative Martin, Senator John Martin, now Representative John Martin, and some of the others that live in those areas know best what it's like to hear from people who have watched our deer herd disappear. And this effort has really been to benefit those parts of the state. So I wanted you to put this bill in context, because the funding from this bill will be part of probably a 20-year process to bring our deer herd back. And with that, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Representative Lyford, question?
Yes, Mr. Trahan, I was wondering, one of the areas that we're targeting to bring the deer back is the Squaw Pan area up around the Moosehead Lake area.
Yep.
We already own 36,000 acres with public lots. Why do we go out and buy more land with this money when we already own 36,000 acres?
Good question, Representative. At one time, not too long ago, about 8% of the area in this region was deer wintering area. Now it's 3%. Those lands that sustain deer over the wintertime are disappearing. And it's partly harvesting practices. It's harvesting practices and predation that we believe have caused those declines. There are, I believe, 35,800 acres of deer wintering area at the Bureau of Parks and Lands. I appreciate you asking this question, because I'm going to say out loud what I've said many times to people, I guess, that are following this issue. I believe that those active deer wintering areas, as part of that 35,800, a lot of those deer have disappeared because people are feeding deer and pulling them out of those deer wintering areas. Bureau of Parks and Lands does not have the aggressive plan to manage deer that IFW has. LD 404, the deer management account, and now this language, has given the department all of the tools that they need to reverse that trend. They can buy deer yards, they can manage them, they can manage the predation, and they can also manage the deer feeding because of LD 404. So if we want a future where those deer come back, we have to buy more deer wintering areas. 35,800 is a tiny, tiny fraction of what we need on the landscape. I've asked Jerry Levine to submit, in his opinion, and then we'll run it through the department, what the land base should be in these regions to bring the deer herd back, what percentage of the land, so that we can have a target. You will see another bill coming in this session, a concept draft from Senator Jackson that will broadly expand on the work of last year. And potentially, we may not need the bill, but potentially you'll be looking at another bill where we can establish those types of goals and criteria, and then maybe a timeline, at least, as to how long it would take to get there. I suspect that number is going to be around 12% of the landscape, but I'll wait for the professionals to tell us otherwise.
Senator Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. David, in regards to the discussion we've been having here this morning, I've received quite a lot of pushback on having to pay for that initial doe permit instead of being just a free lottery.
Yeah.
What are you hearing in your membership and in the conversations you're having? I'm all for paying for the extra, and allowing extra doe permits and paying for them and using it for deer management. But I am receiving resistance from some of the old hunters that don't want to have to pay for that doe permit. They want to leave it just like it is and have the option.
Yeah, well, we asked a series of questions, including a fee increase to our members. Now, remember, my members are committed. They join SAM. I inform them what's going on in our newsletter. So they're pretty well educated on what we're doing with restoring deer. So when I asked them the question, whether they're willing to pay additional amounts of money if they knew it was going to restore deer, I believe the reason I got a 3-to-1 support was that they understand where the money is going and what the future could be. So they're more willing to, but other people have called me, and I think it's always tough to raise fees. Nobody wants to pay anything. But I would ask people, what is our deer herd worth? If you look at the hundreds of millions of dollars in economic opportunity it brings to northern, eastern, and western Maine and how that's disappeared, the fact that guides now cannot guide and cannot legitimately advertise they can guide for white-tailed deer because there's none on the landscape, I would say to those critics, I'll take your pounding. Send them my way, Senator Black. I saw it when it was in its heyday in these regions. And I go there now and bird hunt, and I can go all day without seeing a deer track. Somebody has to have the courage to step up, take the lumps, which I'll take. And in the future, when that deer herd comes back and they're out there praising how wonderful the hunting is in northern Maine, you send them down my way again to thank me.
Are there other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trahan. Yes. Scott, Representative Landry, did I see your hand up?
No.
Okay. All right. How does anyone want to proceed here? We can go with a motion. We can have further discussion. What do we want to do?
I would motion to pass.
Ought to pass, did you say?
I would second that.
Okay, Representative Landry ought to pass. Representative John Martin seconded it. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All right, Linda, please call the roll.
Yes. Representative Lyford,
Yes.
Representative Mason,
Yes.
Representative Hepler,
Yes.
Senator Curry,
Yes.
Senator Black,
Yes.
Senator Dill,
Yes.
Representative Landry,
Yes.
Representative Terrio,
Yes.
Representative Danny Martin,
Yes.
Representative Ordway,
Yes.
Representative Ali. You're muted, sir. You're unmuted.
Okay. Yes.
Representative Nadeau,
Yes.
Representative John Martin. Did he leave us?
No. Representative Martin, you're muted.
Oh. Yes.
Okay, that is unanimous, 13 in favor. Ought to
All right,
pass.
On LD 116, an act to allow the Commissioner of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife to authorize the hunting of antlerless deer without a permit in certain areas. It passes 13-0, and I'll end the work session on this particular bill. Thank you all. All right, that brings us down to LD 1663, an act to improve boater safety on Maine waters. Julia.
Thank you, Senator Jill. I can pull up the language on that. And I just wanted to clarify that vote was for the amendment to 116 that was the language review that we've done previously.
Right, so it was as amended.
Great, okay. Let me pull up would you like the language for the voter safety? Senator Jill?
Yeah, bring it up.
Okay.
And but I do see Representative Martin's hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question to Julia, potentially. We've already voted on this, correct?
Right, this was for language review, so yes.
So what are we doing today?
Right now, it's language review. Even though I'm waiting to see if anybody wants to reconsider this bill, or leave it as it is. There was some discussion whether there was going to be reconsideration.
I would move to reconsider.
Representative Landry has moved to reconsider. Is there a second?
I'd second that.
Was seconded by Representative Ordway. I think we can just do this by a show of hands. Everyone in favor? No one is opposed. All right, so LD 1663, an act to improve boater safety on Maine waters. It is now up for reconsideration. Now, Julia, if you want to pull it up. Please.
Everyone able to see that?
Right.
Great.
So before I have Julia do anything with it, I would ask for some discussion. We've gone over this. I think people pretty much know what has changed about this certificate education. Over 25 horsepower. Here's the summary that you can read right here. I'll give you each a minute to do that, and then I'll open it up for discussion. Representative Lyford.
Thank you, Senator. The reconsideration would be because somebody had a problem with this particular language, and what would that have been?
There's been some concern about grandfathering or lack thereof. Should there be a certain birth year before and after that you need the certificate or not need the certificate? At some point, we had some information given to us that most of the concerns are on boater safety seem to be with people between the ages of 35 and I think 55, if I remember correctly. And so that being the concern, the issue was, do we do something with a birth year so everybody under 55 or thereabouts would have to have boater education? People over 55 would not have to have it. And we really do not have any grandfathering in this bill. It's basically everybody must take the educational courses. And the educational courses, we had the discussion, it varies from free to somewhere in the mid $30 range for a course. And there is an exam that has to be passed afterwards. So this was concerns raised about people taking an exam that maybe haven't taken an exam for anything in, lots and lots of years. Representative Ordway.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Yeah, I also had some contact, quite a bit actually, on this, and one of the most thought-provoking questions is, why would we not? Why don't we care about people in tidal waters? Why is this only inland? is one of the big questions. And the other one was in the process. So I understand there was a stakeholders group in this. And I got a call from one of the people that was involved supposedly, and they had some big concerns because they didn't see the language for a review until after we passed it. They had time to comment. That was disturbing.
All right, Representative Danny Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't recall any concerns being discussed during the public hearing. Or maybe it's something that I've missed. I've heard some scuttlebutt after we took a vote. Do we know where the concern is coming from? Is it phone calls to committee members? Because I haven't received anything. I just wondering if there's anyone out there that knows who originated the concern or what is a concern.
Well, I think the concern again that the process, the concern was Representative Martin that in a lot of these bills we put stakeholder groups together.
Yeah.
And in this particular one, we did not have a stakeholder group. And I think there was some misconception that there was a stakeholders group. And since they thought there was a stakeholders group, people were left off in that stakeholders group. And of course, essentially everybody was left off the stakeholders group because there wasn't one. But I think that's what happened. It appeared that there was one, and then all of a sudden the floodgates opened and said, wow, we weren't represented, marine waters or sportsmen or boaters or fishermen, on and on. No one was represented because there wasn't one. And that's kind of where we are right at the moment. I think people thought that this is a big enough issue, a big enough change in boating regulations that there may have been should have been stakeholder input. Representative Terrio.
Thank you, Senator. And I also have some concern. I think the grandfathering thing is kind of appropriate. I've been operating a boat over 50 years myself, but I don't think anybody should be exempt from a little bit of education on this, because some things have changed, even like with milfoil and just a general more information on boater safety in general. So I don't mind having a grandfathered piece, but I think that there should be a separate class, not a 3-hour course which is the original safety course, but maybe a half an hour refresher for everyone. That's if we're going to go with a grandfathering piece, I just like to throw that out there as maybe a half an hour course of a little education never hurt anybody. And I got to tell you, nobody knows everything. So I think we have enough concerns with even the older boaters that, you know what, having a little refresher wouldn't be a bad thing.
Thank you. Representative Hepler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Representative Terrio, for saying a little education never hurt anybody. I teach college, so that was much appreciated. But I also want to echo what Representative Terrio said, especially with changing rules about invasive species and plants. I think, and again, if we need to go with grandfathering, maybe we do, but I do think that something ought to be made available and made required for everyone. That's just my 2 cents right now.
I have a question for maybe the commissioner may be able to answer this. Of the 3 or 4 boater safety courses, I know you said that we have, do you know what the lengths of those are? Are they all several hours, or are there, like an hour one and then?
Yeah, thanks, Senator Dill. And I think each of the current courses would be more toward the 3 or 4 hours, the online courses. Of course, it depends on how quickly people go through the modules and read, but I would say on average, probably 3 to 4 hours. The in-person class is a little bit longer. It looks like the Deputy Commissioner wants to weigh in here. but I think that's an average.
And the way those are set up, there's an exam at the end of each one, correct?
So one of them has the option that you don't have to take the exam, and you can just take the course, and then but you don't get the certificate. So if you want the certificate to be but then you would have to take the exam. But
Okay. Deputy Commissioner Peabody.
Thank you, Senator. Analytics on one of the online courses was 6 hours as an average for participants. So I think it actually might be a little bit higher than 3 or 4, and our in-person one is 6 hours.
Okay, thank you. Senator Black.
Couple of questions, if I could, Mr. Chair. First one is to either Tim or the commissioner. Is there anything in any of those courses educational towards invasive species and that kind of stuff? So, I mean, because we're saying that's more education on that area. So that would be my first question. Is there education components in those courses for that?
there is an invasive species component to them. And then we will work to sort of update those annually or every other year as needed, whatever, to make sure that they are Maine specific. And so in addition, we would add in information around, sort of, I kind of term it responsible recreation, but so that folks aren't harassing wildlife or, causing unnecessary erosion, just making sure people are aware of some of the ethics around boating in addition to the rules of the road, if you will. But yeah, I think that's the benefit of the online modules, is that we can add those specific things into Maine.
I guess that answered my questions, but I guess I would like to make a statement that I'm really struggling with mandating, somebody 65, 75 years old to take a 4 to 6 hour course online. So I guess I'm not in favor of completely without having some kind of a grandfathering clause of some sort.
Representative Lightfoot.
Thank you, Senator. Commissioner, how did we leave it with the Maine guides? Were they required, any of them?
So I believe the requirement, Representative Lightfoot, is if not all Maine guides would be exempt, but if they do have a captain's license, then they would have gone through the Coast Guard training and they would not have to take this class. Is that accurate, Tim?
Yeah, it's on the screen right now.
We offer a boat operator certificate, which to get that, they have to take a boating safety course. So that's how the Maine guides get exempted. Not all of them take that certification, but those that do are exempted.
Follow up.
Yes.
Tim, so like a master Maine guide wouldn't have to take it, but a guide just in, for instance, hiking or fishing or would have to take that, right?
Representative Lightfoot, most master Maine guides have taken the boat operator's license. They already have the boat operator's license, so they would not be required.
Thank you.
Before I go to you, Representative Ordway, Deputy Commissioner Peabody, do you see what's on the screen?
Yes, Senator.
Okay, so you've been talking about a master guide license. Is that different than a Maine guide license?
It's the classification of the master license. It's the same thing. It's a higher classification than a quote regular Maine guide's license.
Well, I was just curious because it says possesses here a Maine guide license, then they don't have to have the education.
Yeah, as long as they've met their passengers for hire.
Right, under section whatever. Yep. Okay. Representative Ordway.
Yeah, I'm really glad that we brought this back because you may remember that I had some big concerns about the grandfathering part of it. But my question would be for either the deputy commissioner or the commissioner. Why did we leave tidal waters out of this? Why is it only in the inland waters?
I can take a stab at it, and if I have any holes, I'm sure the Deputy Commissioner can fill in. Representative Ordway, so this bill was presented last session, and I think with all the increased boating activity during COVID, it really came to light the need for some additional education. And so we were, as you were, being faced with lots of requests for horsepower restriction, watercraft restrictions, but all in, primarily in inland waters where folks were seeing increased boating traffic and pressure, and for lack of a better term, more sort of shenanigans and kind of irresponsible behavior on the water, on inland waters. And so the same hasn't been it hasn't been the same case on coastal waters. And so they haven't seen the same level of irresponsible boating behavior on the coast. And with the coastal tradition, particularly for the commercial fishermen and families that are going out, and, they've got young kids running out to get the skiff to bring their, parents hither and yon. And that's just sort of the way of the life on the coastal waters. Are just very different than the inland waters. And so because they weren't seeing the same level of complaints, and they have that added complexity of all of the sort of commercial fishing industry, we worked with the Department of Marine Resources and agreed that we don't need to move forward with it on tidal waters right now. Tim?
Yeah, just to support what the commissioner said, we started getting requests for exemptions from it. And rather than having a long list of exemptions, as Commissioner just mentioned, commercial fishing, et cetera, we chose to just get something started and eliminate marine waters, tidal waters.
It might help to bring the colonel in, because he could maybe address some additional, any questions or concerns about complaints or compliance. So if you have those kind of questions, I would just ask to bring Colonel Scott in.
Sure, we can bring the colonel in case we have any questions for him. Representative Ordway.
And I appreciate your answer, but how do I answer a constituent that asked me the question, why do we care more about folks on inland waters safety, because this is a safety bill, than we do with safety on tidal waters? And I appreciate your answer. I get your answer. How do I answer that to a constituent who only wants to hear a sentence?
Well, the course will be available for everyone, and we will encourage everyone that is operating a vessel to take the class. I think, given the current level of concerns in issues around these right now, our focus is on on inland waters, where we're having more concerns raised. Is that fair? I don't know if the Colonel Scott wants to weigh in. I can't see him here yet, but if he
Yeah, he's in, and I do have a question for the colonel. So could you, Colonel Scott, go over the issue of infractions, if you would? I think we'd had some information about the age range, but how many are we getting a year? And do you know what the numbers are in tidal waters versus inland waters?
Okay, I can't. Can you hear me, Senator?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
I can't answer the difference between tidal and inland. I can get that later on if you want, just because it's DMR that deals with the tidal waters. As far as inland waters, in 2021, we addressed a little over 375 violations with summonses, and a little over 780, so over 1,000 total with warnings. And similarly, in 2020, it was about 200 violations and over 600 warnings. So, you're around in the 800 to 1,000 range that we're actually physically addressing on the water. Of course, 2020, we expected that to be a little bit lower just because people weren't supposed to be coming to the state. As far as some other statistics, in 2021, we inspected a little over 17,000 vessels and spent a little bit more than 9,400 hours on the water. Those numbers are fairly consistent. 2020 was a little lower due to COVID, over 14,000 vessels inspected and 9,000 hours on the water. pre-COVID, we were in the 22 to 23,000 vessels inspected and 10,000 hours on the water. So we spend a significant amount of time enforcing boating related laws. It's also, if there's one area where we have a special focus and some additional staffing and funding, it would be under boating due to our federal Coast Guard grant. Every year we hire 4 part-time deputies to do just boating enforcement, and most of their time is focused on the southern part of the state. I think the commissioner really kind of glad I wasn't in yet. She answered the question around the tidal area probably better than I would have. But keep in mind, when what drove this legislation was a whole number of other legislations that we were considering, as well as rulemaking requests around surface water use, around horsepower restrictions, around jet skis, around environmental concerns, around rules of the road and boating, clean, drain, dry, invasive species. And during every one of those conversations, it came back to, well, we also need to educate boaters. I mean, it was always enforcement and education, enforcement and education. Well, there's only, those numbers I gave showed you that we're doing a lot of enforcement. However, there's a lot of boats and a lot of lakes and ponds in the state of Maine. I think we register over 130,000 boats. So we took this legislation on as well. We'll, if all these pieces of recreational boating need education, well, we should look into mandatory boater education. The commissioner hit it right out of the park as far as how we ended up exempting or moving in that direction. That is a little bit unique, even amongst the national standards. The folks from NASPLA ask us about it, but I do think Maine is a little bit unique in the fact that our coastal boating is fairly heavy around commercial fishing, as opposed to our inland boating is very heavy around recreation. And again, remember, the complaints and the concerns we were trying to deal with are mostly from the lakes and ponds and property owners and other boaters who reference other recreational boaters on inland waters. So we were kind of cautioned by the committee to baby step our way into this a little bit because there were some concerns about it. So in order to do that, we excluded the tidal waters because we did hear from DMR and some folks on the coast that, you know, that's kind of traditional way of life. And there's 14, 15s and 16-year-olds who are out running boats. They're early in their lives and getting that experience. Whereas we didn't grandfather any particular age, we put in a 25 horsepower or more. And so we kind of grandfathered anybody who's running around with a 9.9, a 15 horse, a 25, the traditional aluminum boat, tiller drive fisher person who's out there fishing for trout and salmon in front of their camp. And additionally, in order to try to address the time it would probably take some people to get used to taking the course or finding an in-person course and an online course, that's why we pushed it out 5 years. So we were careful to try to make all considerations. We didn't want to just say, okay, starting next year, everybody will take mandatory boater ed. But there are absolutely statistics out there that I can provide to the committee, the website through the national reporting system that shows that folks who are at least crash statistics, not necessarily complaints around operation, but you know, crashes are usually related to some kind of poor operation or other poor decisions, that in the 30 to over 55 year range, the crashes are much higher in that age range than they are in the younger age range. And there's also studies out there by Mark Judas group that also shows that. Now, we had some discussions last week with some of the stakeholders, so to speak, even though we weren't directed to have a stakeholder group. And they said, you know, they indicated that most of the folks who were out there, those statistics may be skewed because more people who own boats are in those age ranges and are more likely, there's a higher percentage of those folks out there. And we completely agree with that. And that's one of the reasons we feel in order to address these issues in a timely manner that were brought to our attention, we included that age range. However, we have heard as well that there were some concerns about it. Sounds like there are some on the committee. If there needs to be more work done, we can do that. The model born after date, you know, we've done that with Hunter Education and other pieces. But the reality is, you're looking at 35 or 40 years before you may get to where you to get to where you need to be with everybody having voter ed. And then the last comment I'll make, just because I was in the waiting room, is so this past weekend I had my 16-year-old take one of the courses, just because I wanted to see exactly what was on it and how long it would take her as well. It took her just over 4 hours. She passed because it's set up in modules, and there's quizzes along the way. Each quiz basically builds towards the final exam. There was absolutely modules on invasive species, clean, drain, dry, and Maine specific laws. But keep in mind, some people have come to us about, is it possible to shorten the education process? If we want our course to be recognized by the other states that require mandatory voter education, it has to be a NASBLA approved course. And so the 4 courses that we have online, you're not going to find one that's an hour and one that's 4 or 5, because they all have to have the same basic content, which is about 4 hours to get the full NASBLA curriculum. So, I mean, the department has the ability, as the commissioner said, to pull out modules, and education's always good, and maybe have shorter specific education out there, but it's not going to produce a certificate for somebody that would hold up if they went to another state. And that's why we wrote our law that way. The national standard is a NASBLA approved course. So sorry for the long discussion, but you kept me in the waiting room for a while. Thank you.
Do you know how many states have voter education requirements?
I believe it's 45 or so. And if you look at our report back that we provided you early in the session, there's a couple links to that. I think we sent that to you electronically. The links in there have the specific states and exactly what they require. Now, keep in mind, a mandatory requirement could be, some of them are full-blown, everybody's mandatory, every age. Other ones are, personal watercraft only. So there is a chart in there that lays it out. But by far and away, there's many more states that have motorboat operation mandatory requirements than we do, and many of those states have had them since the 80s and 90s. And there's absolutely statistics that show that the longer a state has had it, there's a reduction in their crash rates.
Thank you. Representative Hepler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Colonel Scott, for that explanation. I think that answered a lot of questions that people had. It was a good reminder for what we've heard in the past. I guess I was sort of thinking about this. I mean, part of this has to do with the tidal coastal waters versus inland waters, but also on a larger scale. But starting this as sort of there's a lot of different rules involved here. There's been a lot of work. And so I'm kind of seeing this part of it, this bill, as sort of a pilot program, sort of baby steps, and see how it works. There are different rules regarding commercial fishing on the coast. And so maybe we take a little more time to work those in as well. I don't think anybody who operates a commercial fishing boat is opposed to boater safety. I think it's just that the rules are a little more complicated. And I see this as something that takes, it takes several years to work into, or 20, well, not several, but 3 or 4 to work into. As Colonel Scott said, it's for boats over 25 horsepower. And I think that, starting this somewhere is a good way to go.
Representative Ordway.
Thank you, Senator. Colonel Scott, thanks for that information. But if you could, in your research of the 45 states, and obviously not all of them, the ones that it would apply to, how many of those states include tidal waters in their mandatory education? And I don't expect you to have the answer today.
Well, what I can give you is in drafting some of this legislation, or we didn't draft the legislation, but responding to the legislation from last year, we did consult with the educational coordinator from NASBA, the national organization. And one of the primary concerns that he had was the fact that we were exempting the coast. And he said that's not traditional and that's not typical of some states. But quite frankly, from some of the vibes we were receiving, maybe through these discussions with the committee and other places, we felt that if we didn't do that, this may go nowhere. And we wanted to get some education into our voters to address some of the issues we've been having. But I can check on that, but just directly talking to Mr. Chansky, he was surprised when we alluded to exclude tidal water. So I think you're going to find that most other states that have a tide will have education component to them.
Representative Danny Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just questioning the posture that we're in. We just voted unanimously to reconsider. And I'm assuming that when we made the motion to reconsider or approve the motion to reconsider was to reconsideration on the previous vote that we've taken. So does that mean that the previous vote where we voted to move forward on this is now null and void? And if so, would we have to have another motion to move this matter forward?
Well, we have several options right in front of us. We can just stay right in the posture we're in. You know, that's the bill. We move this one forward. We can change it here, maybe grandfathering or date or whatever. We could also turn this into a resolve and ask the department to put a stakeholder group together and, you know, maybe have a very narrow focus, and that's on mandatory education. How do we move forward with mandatory voter education? So it's not this real big issue, but, you know, we want it very specific on voter education. So there are several options available to us at the moment. We are reconsidering it, but if we don't do anything, as far as I understand, and Julia can correct me if I'm wrong, our vote stands. We're just discussing whether to change this or not.
Correct.
Representative Landry.
I would like to see a resolve to come forward with the stakeholders group. If we're going to do this, do it right. There's too many people out there not happy with what we're doing. I feel we ought to, you know, do a resolve and get it right.
So what are you suggesting the resolve would look like, Representative Landry?
To establish a stakeholders group, to get everybody involved. Let's look at the ocean waters as well.
So it's a mandatory education course
for everybody.
For everybody. I mean, however the stakeholder group comes back to us, of course, it could be everybody, it could be nobody.
Exactly.
I mean, or grandfathering a bunch, or however they come back. Okay, I hear you. What was that?
I said if he makes that a motion, I'd second that.
I'll do that.
It's been moved and seconded. Representative Danny Martin.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, don't we have to reconsider our action whereby we voted on LD, what is it, 1813?
Julia, I will turn to you on what we have to do right now.
So I believe you voted with the majority to reconsider the bill, which puts you back to not having voted on the language at this time. And you are at liberty to, if I'm understanding the direction right, to amend the bill into a resolve that directs the department to establish a stakeholder group that's going to look at voting safety, mandatory voting safety classes.
Right. As I think you asked before, Representative Martin, we had several, we could keep it right the way it is, but we'd have to vote on it again, like you just asked.
Correct.
Or we change it to any other fashion that we want and have to vote on that.
Yeah, no, Julia is correct. All we need to do is amend our previous motions.
Right. Representative Lyford.
Thank you, Senator. If we put a stakeholder group together, this is going to delay this for another year, I believe. Would that be a question, I guess?
Yes, absolutely. This would be, you know, a resolve that would put a stakeholder group and give the committee the ability to report out a bill next year.
I'd be more interested in amending the bill we passed than delay it for another year.
Okay. All right. Representative Landry.
In response to that, this wasn't going to take effect for quite a while. Wasn't it 27?
Right.
Until 2027. So I don't see where that's going to have a big effect.
Other discussion? Senator Black.
Just a question, maybe a little food for thought. I mean, there doesn't seem, well, except for tidal waters, there doesn't seem to be much opposition for, you know, the low age, like 16 or under, or 18 or under. Is it possible that in the motion or in a separate bill or something that we could get this process started for the, you know, for the lower end and study, you know, 18 and older with a stakeholders group or something? Just a question.
I think the answer to that is, Senator Black, we've given them a fairly narrow focus, I think, on looking at, you know, mandatory voter education. And they can come back to us, and that may be exactly what the stakeholders may say to us, you know, that we're going to start it out with, you know, the low end or the high end or our middle group. So we're giving them the opportunity to bring a group together to discuss how we move forward with mandatory voter education. As I think what I heard from Representative Landry.
Yes.
Okay. Representative Ordway.
Yeah, I don't think I agree with Representative Lyford that I'm really not interested in a resolve. I'd like to just see some amendments that include tidal waters and some sort of, I'll leave it to way smarter people than me, and that's everybody, some sort of language on grandfathering.
And I hear you, Representative, and I think personally, by doing what we're doing here, we'll get that language, but it will be 1 year out. But since it's basically a 5-year, as somebody pointed out, it's in 2027 it goes into effect. I don't think delaying it will hurt it that much. And as you pointed out, with a group much smarter than us and more knowledgeable in the area possibly than us, that they may be able to come back with some information on the best way to proceed. Senator Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to see, and maybe this is an offering of a friendly amendment to the resolve, to consider a specific rollout timeframe that might include earlier rollout for children, for those under 18. And so if the stakeholder group can look at that as a possibility of rolling that out earlier, and then we can get to and just dealing with the time frame, and because it feels like 2027 would be fast for getting the whole voting community there, but it feels pretty late for getting 12-year-olds there. And so I'd love that to be part of the amendment or the resolve to the stakeholder group.
Representative Lyford.
Obviously, the course is available now. The colonel's daughter took it. I'd like to see us promote that somehow, that the course could be taken now, even before the stakeholder group comes together.
Representative Ordway.
I'm trying. There we go. I guess this is a question for somebody that's seen the courses. We mentioned 12-year-olds. Are these courses geared towards a 12-year-old? I mean, I've designed many courses and certainly not in this area, but they're designed for a specific audience. And would these courses be designed for a 12-year-old? Or can a 12-year-old operate a boat on his own, I guess?
Is that directed at anybody particularly, Representative, or was it just kind of more of a statement?
It was directed at the anybody that's seen the tests.
All right, that would go back to the department. Anybody from the department want to comment on that? Colonel Scott.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, most of the national standards for mandatory voter ed are a younger standard, like 12 or 14 years old. And the courses are designed so that those folks can pass them, no different than our hunter education courses are directed to somebody to be, say, 10 years old. The particular course, it's very interactive. There's some reading involved. There's some live high definition video that was shot, with a video camera and somebody operating a boat. And there's also some interactive video where you control the boat on the screen. So it kind of engages all of your senses, and they are designed so that younger people can take them, because across most of the country, younger people are able to operate boats. And currently in the state of Maine, a 13-year-old can operate a boat of any size without any kind of education, without any accompaniment. So 500 horsepower ski boat, the way our laws are currently written. And just one other thing I'll add, just because it was brought up from Senator Curry. It's a good point, is there are some model recommendations out there to phase in a born after date. So they can be a little bit confusing to the public, and that's why we stayed a little bit away from them. But some of them are, a 1990. Everybody at 1990 is required to take the boating course within 2 years, and then 1980 is 2 years after that. 1970 is a few years after that. So you phase it in much more quickly than over 30 or 40 years, but you do it in basically 10-year age groups. So there is a possibility for, if there is a stakeholder group, for them to look at that kind of a phase in born after date, sir.
Representative Martin.
One of the things we could do is enact this legislation and ask us the group who's going to be SETI come back with changes that they might suggest. So then we'd have a starting point. I think just putting it out to another group is just going to be a real problem.
So you're suggesting that we move this forward as is, but amend it to say that within a year they come back with more recommendations or something to that effect?
Right. See if they have any recommendations that they would suggest that we should maybe be making to the law as we enacted it.
Okay. Representative Ordway.
Just a comment to the very scary thing that Colonel Scott said. A 13-year-old can operate a 500 horsepower boat, but they can't ride a bicycle without a helmet. That might need to be looked at.
Other comments, questions? We do have a motion on the floor at the moment. Representative Danny Martin. You're muted, Representative Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Apologize. Does anybody remember what the motion was, or could the representative who made the motion to repeat it?
Representative Landry.
It was a resolve to establish a stakeholders group to look at mandatory boater education and all aspects thereof, including coastal waters, tidal waters. And there were several other suggestions to be included in that, but just a group to look at the whole picture.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, that would literally wipe out all the language contained in LD 1813. And LD 1813 would be
1663.
I'm sorry, thank you. Changed into a resolve, correct?
Correct. But Representative Landry, your original motion was much narrower than the way you just stated it. You just kind of, you opened this up to everybody that everything was said, and I'm not sure if that is what you really mean or not, because a lot of different things were thrown there from everywhere from 16-year-olds to 500 horsepower bicycles or something. I don't know. So,
well, if we do a stakeholders group, then hope the idea is for them to look at, what do we need to consider? Let them come to us with a bill that makes sense, that mandates boater education. And if we have to determine the grandfathering and all these other things, let that group do that.
So then are you saying to take the bill that we have in front of us, take this to the stakeholders group and say, okay, rework this bill? We've got a very good framework that originally was unanimous from us. It seems like that was a pretty good framework until the wheels on the bus started to fall off for some reason. And come back to us with maybe the same bill or some modifications to it concerning voter education, which is basically what the bill is, even though it says voter safety, but we're talking voter education.
Exactly.
Julia.
I just wanted to point out some of the vehicles that are at the disposal of the committee. One would be, as suggested, to amend the bill into resolve. Another is to add an allocated or unallocated section that would keep the language, but direct the department to convene a stakeholders group as described. And another option, which has no force of law, would be to write a letter to the department. I just thought it might be helpful to have those options on the table as the discussion was happening.
So the second one you gave us basically was what I heard Representative Martin say, John Martin. He said, let's pass the bill and ask them to, come back with some more information next year. So we could do that as unallocated language. So Representative Lightfoot.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. I certainly like the Representative Martin's idea, and I'd be in favor of that.
Representative Terrio.
Yeah, I just got a message from the sponsor, the original sponsor of the bill, that maybe we should table this. And there certainly seems to be an awful lot of problems.
Table it to what end? Do we know?
I don't know, but it just seems like there's so many things that we're just completely on the wrong side of everything right now. So I think it needs to be relooked at.
Representative Danny Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would not be opposed to tabling it, but I would not be prepared to vote on anything until I see something in writing. Because without exception, I think every member of this committee has raised a concern on this bill.
Who's next? Oh, Senator Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also would not be opposed to a tabling. I'm not putting that motion forward. I just wanted to, I am more inclined to pass the parts of this that are non-controversial. So the youth, particularly the youth portions of it, and go towards the unallocated, towards the things that are more problematic, namely the adults and the grandfathering and timeframes on that. So I'm leaning in that direction, but it's a lean. I feel underprepared for a vote on this.
I'm seeing 2 or 3 folks wanting to table it. I see a resolve to put a stakeholders group together, which is where we are right at the moment. So we'd have to defeat this motion, or it could be tabled where in the posture we're in, or defeat this and come back and table the issue, which would probably be the cleanest. But or we could again amend it to what Representative John Martin had said. Representative Terrio.
I'm going to make a motion, we table it.
So if you do that, we're tabling it in the posture we're in. We will come back and pick up an amendment. When we take it off the table, we're still at the resolve. Okay, Representative Ordway.
That'd be all right.
Before I ask for a second, Representative Ordway had his hand up. Representative Ordway.
Yeah, I would be in favor of tabling, but I ask for a date certain when we're going to get this back. I don't want it to.
Why don't we get it back on the 28th? Because we don't have any meetings next week anyway, so we can bring it back on Monday the 28th. And by doing that, listening to what Representative Danny Martin said, though, he'd like to see where we'll start is the specific language that's in the motion that Representative Scott Landry has. So I would ask him to work with Julia to bring back that language at that time. So we have information. Representative, before I go to your representative, I will ask Julia just in case you were going to second it or something. Okay, Julia.
I'm happy to do so. I also just wanted to clarify or make sure that I'm understanding that currently the posture that we're in is that by reconsidering, there is currently no vote on the vote that was previously made. We have no vote on the language at this time.
That's correct.
Okay.
Representative Hepler.
I guess that was my question. I'm still confused as to what we are tabling.
Okay, what happened was we reconsidered the bill, and Representative Landry suggested a new amendment turning it into a resolve. Several people said they'd like to table the bill to have more information. Representative Danny Martin said, well, if you're going to bring it back, I want to see some specific language to look at. And the specific language right at the moment we would be looking at, we already have the original bill. We got that language that was unanimous. But the motion that at least Representative Scott Landry has put forward is a resolve with some things around that. What we need to have is what those things are, because those bounced all over the place on exactly what it was. I haven't asked for a second yet, so we can have this discussion on the tabling motion. Julia.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to still have my hand up. But the amendment as we're seeing it is now proposed language.
Okay, is there a second on the tabling motion?
Second.
It's been seconded by Representative Danny Martin. Please call the roll on this one.
Yes. Starting with Representative Lyford.
This motion is to this
It's
vote is to
tabled
take-
till the 28th, yep.
Yes.
Representative Mason,
Yes.
Representative Hepler,
Yes.
Senator Curry,
Yes.
Senator Black,
Yes.
Senator Dill,
Yes.
Representative Landry,
Yes.
Representative Terrio,
Yes.
Representative Danny Martin,
Yes.
Representative Ordway,
Yes.
Representative Alley,
You're muted, Representative Alley. You're unmuted now.
Okay, yes.
Representative Nadeau,
Yes.
and Representative John Martin.
Yes.
Okay, again, unanimous, 13 in favor of table.
Okay, so it's tabled till the 28th. Thank you all. Next on our agenda is quick, I hope, language review of tagging of big game and tagging of turkey. Remember, these are just kind of the language that where we were. It's been put forward to come back to us, both of these as LDs, and hopefully those will be on our agenda on Wednesday, and they'll get back to us so they can be advertised, and we can look at those the following week too. Because again, the following week on Wednesday, we don't have sessions, so it could be a busy Monday if it can be advertised for then. Julie, is that going to work? If they refer it back, if it's referred to us on Wednesday morning, can it be advertised for the following Monday? I know we're down to a week, but is that really a week?
I am actually not sure because it's 2 weekends was what's significant before. So that is 1 weekend. So I'd actually need to ask for clarification whether that would qualify as a week.
I mean, technically that's 1 weekend, because if you advertise it for the week after, you'd be back to 2 weekends. So I assume we can advertise it for Monday, the 28th. Representative Danny Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but I do want to thank Julia and the commissioner on working on this. I have spoken to the commissioner over the weekend regarding this matter, And it's my understanding that they're supportive and that's something that they are recommending in the form of this piece of legislation. I do have a question to the commissioner, if she's available, regarding section 1. If you read the bill, section 1 says that the commissioner shall adopt rules governing electronic registration of big game, and on the other bill, turkey. The commissioner knows full well the rulemaking process, but going to rulemaking requires the advice and consent of the council. So what happens if the legislature directs the commissioner to go to rulemaking on a particular item and the advisory council refuses to give its consent? What happens in that process?
Thank you, Representative Martin. You're absolutely right, and there's always a risk when we bring something to rulemaking, and when the legislature directs us to do so. That's always sort of our challenge. Is I don't control the outcome of that process, but we would at that point come back to the committee with that update. I believe would be the sort of normal course of things, that we would bring it back to the legislative committee and look for guidance or perhaps additional statutory changes. There aren't. Is Nate Webb on, or could we bring him in? We could just review what some of the rule changes would need to be, so you'd have a better understanding if that would help, Representative.
No, I understand. I understand, but as you well know, by the 20th of April, we're going to be out of here, hopefully. So I don't know when the rule process is, but that's something that you ought to take a look at. And when we have a public hearing to discuss it further, maybe there's something that we can add to section 1 that would really require you to go to rulemaking and maybe exempt the advice and consent, because, if I was the commissioner and I really didn't want this bill here, I know darn well what I would do. I'd go to rulemaking and tell my advisory council not to approve it. So that's the concern that I have. But other than that, thank you very much for putting this bill forward. And it's my understanding that you do support what is being presented in this draft form. Is that correct?
Absolutely, we do. And I just wanted to clarify that for the committee, that the department is just trying to lay out a framework under which we can all be successful. That's all. So we are keen to move forward. We just want to make sure that we do it in such a way that allows, the hunters to not be frustrated trying to self-report and our management not suffer as a result. So we're just trying to clean it up and simplify things so that when we get to the end product, it's going to be amazing and work well for everybody.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, so Julia, do you have some language for us on both these issues?
Yes, I will pull those up, and there are, as you pointed out, Mr. Chair, there are no changes since the discussion.
Okay. And if there's no changes, just quickly put them up and just let us go through them. And
great, yes, I will do that. So here we have the tagging of turkey. We have the direction to adopt rules here. We then see that reflected throughout the other sections, just that the deferment will be to the rules on that. And then we have the report as discussed for further statutory changes that need to be made so that it is done cleanly and correctly. I'll now pull up big game. Here we are. So we have the direction to adopt rules, again, reflected. And ultimately the direction.
Representative Danny Martin.
So Julia, if you could go back to section 1, please.
Yes.
All right. See where it says the commissioner shall adopt rules governing electronic registration of big game and on the other bill, turkey, period. What happens if the commissioner's office moves forward with the rule as directed by this legislature, if this passes, and the advisory council doesn't approve the consent? Does that not kill the entire 2 bills?
Well, I think there's two answers to that. One, then you're correct, the rules would not be adopted, but the statutes always take precedent over rules. And then were that to happen, you have here that the committee may report out a bill related to electronic tagging in the 131st legislature.
Yeah, and that's basically what the resolve said, and here we are, we're still discussing it. So I'm just wondering if you could take a look at section 1 again and see if we could strengthen that rulemaking process, or maybe waive the requirement that the advisory council has to give its advice and consent. I seriously doubt that would occur, but it could. Just give it some thought.
Well, I think Representative Martin, again, this is just the draft language. Once we get it back, we'll have a public hearing and a work session on it, so we can change it at that point in time to reflect what your concerns are if we need to.
Right.
And you've asked Julia to look into what that language might look like, so. Representative John Martin.
Just want to point out, in my history, rarely have I seen a recommendation from the commissioner being denied by the committee. So I don't see that as an issue.
I just would tend to disagree, but that's okay.
They didn't reject your recommendations.
No, they didn't, but they rejected ours.
And that's my point.
All right. Julia.
I just quickly wanted to note that this is a committee bill, and so if we do make language changes, I'll need the direction from the committee. But I'm also, of course, very happy to work with Representative Martin. And for now, but I just wanted to point that.
Yeah, right.
out.
For now, though, this is the language. We were just making sure that we had language and it was okay, that there was nothing glaring. So this will be the language that will come forward to us, as I just stated, in whatever the LD is that is forwarded to us from legislature, hopefully the following week, the week of the 28th, that we can hear this bill on the 28th and then have go into work session the following week to get this behind us. But at that time, of course, we can change this anyway or deny it, ought not to pass. Whatever, it's just like any other bill at that point in time. But we now then, as Representative Martin has been asking for, we now have language to work with and react to. Correct?
Correct.
Thank you, Representative Martin. Anything else today, Julia? More questions, first from the commissioner.
Thank you, Representative Gill. I just wanted to clarify on the stakeholder process for I guess you tabled the mandatory voter education bill, but as we move forward, just looking for permission to continue to work with Julia on that.
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, it's been tabled, and any language that can come back, to people can come up with a suitable compromise in between, that's fine. Did I see another hand? It's gone down if I did. Oh, Representative Hepler.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, actually, in talking about the voter safety thing, I had asked Deirdre Gilbert to start watching this when it went in the tidal waters direction. So she's going to watch the YouTube, and possibly, so if you need to reach out to her for language, she'd also be available, it looks like.
Okay, any other comments? Julia, anything else to come before us today?
That's it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative Lightfoot.
Thanks, Senator Dill. So our next meeting is the 28th, is that correct? Because
Correct.
we're in.
Yep, holiday next Monday and session on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Representative Terrio.
Yeah, just a comment for Commissioner. I did get my Moose Friday, just to let you know. My truck took a beating. Yeah, it was awesome.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Doesn't sound good.
Probably doesn't sound good for his truck, but
How big was the moose?
It was only a 300-pounder, but at least no one got hurt. That's all I cared about. Yeah, my truck took a beating.
any other questions, comments? Linda, anything else for us?
Yeah, I just want to remind the chairs and leads to keep an eye open for the invite, which will be coming out shortly after this closes.
Yep. Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Representative Alley and seconded by Representative